You're fired. Effective immediately. Richard Kellen didn't read from the agenda. He pointed straight at me, as if naming the verdict made it final. The word immediately landed harder than the rest. A short laugh broke from the far end of the table, then another. I watched 3 phones rise almost in unison. Lenses aimed, already certain something worth recording was about to happen. I stayed seated. The vice chair shifted first, then stood. Others followed, chairs scraping back, palms meeting in a stiff rehearsed rhythm. Applause. Not for a decision, for a performance. I'm Meredith Hale. For 6 years. I was the one who signed off when things carried risk. The one who stopped problems before they became headlines. None of that mattered now. Security, Richard added, without looking away from me. Make sure she doesn't access anything on her way out. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. The effect moved through the room anyway. A few eyes dropped. One director cleared his throat and looked down at his hands. A folder slid across the table toward me. Termination papers. Already prepared, already final. Sign. Someone urged, too quickly. The pen lay uncapped, waiting. I didn't reach for it. Richard's mouth tightened. You don't need to make this harder. I met his stare and said nothing. No defense, no explanation. I let the silence stretch long enough for discomfort to creep in. Long enough to notice the detail that didn't fit. They were rushing, not just to remove me now. The meeting hadn't even officially closed. I stood at last, smoothing my jacket, feeling the weight of every eye still trained on me. Phones stayed up. Applause faded into an awkward quiet. As I turned toward the door, my phone vibrated once in my hand. A new message preview flashed across the screen. Please confirm termination terms. I didn't open it. Not yet. Behind me, Richard's voice followed. Clipped and certain. This is done. It wasn't. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the characters and events are imagined, the emotional truths reflect real experiences of power, silence, and accountability in the workplace. Security stepped aside to let me pass. I walked out without looking back, already aware that something had shifted. Not in my favor, not yet. But the urgency in that room stayed with me, sharp and unmistakable. They hadn't erased me, they had hurried. And haste always leaves a trail. Why would they fear what I might access after firing me? Make sure she doesn't touch anything. Richard's instruction followed me into the hallway, sharp enough to cut through the closing doors. Security hesitated, then moved faster, as if speed could erase whatever he was afraid of. I slowed my pace on purpose. Keys, one of them said, holding out his hand. He avoided my eyes. He knew this wasn't procedure. I placed my badge in his palm. My phone stayed with me, company devices too. Richard added from behind, still standing, still watching. I'll keep the phone, I said, calm, measured. The kind of tone people mistake for compliance. No one challenged it, not him, not the board members pretending to review their calendars instead of watching how this played out. That was when it settled in. This wasn't about appearances, the applause, the phones, the laughter that was theater. The real concern was control. They needed to cut me off before I could reach something they didn't want touched. The elevator ride down was quiet, too quiet. As soon as the doors closed, my phone vibrated again. An internal message request blinked, then disappeared. Someone had started typing, someone had stopped. I opened my email instead and drafted a single message. No emotion, no accusation. Please confirm my termination was effective immediately, without notice, and approved by unanimous board vote. I read it once, then again, clean, factual, impossible to misinterpret. I added the entire board. Richard last, send. The reply came faster than it should have. Confirmed. Another followed before I could lock the screen. Approved and done. A third chimed in, almost eager, effective immediately. Each response tightened the knot in my chest. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. They wanted this locked, sealed, undeniable. My phone vibrated again. This time, a private message stayed. Good. Keep everything. It read, Jonah Reed, compliance. No greeting, no explanation. He didn't need one. I stepped out onto the street and took a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The company logo reflected in the glass behind me, pristine as ever. Inside, people were already rewriting the story of my exit. Let them. Another notification arrived. Richard had replied, all confirmed. We're moving forward. I didn't respond. I archived the thread, backed it up, and turned my phone to silent. Whatever they thought they had finished upstairs, they had just put in writing. And writing lasts longer than applause. What happens when powerful people rush to close a door without checking the locks? The replies kept coming, confirmed. The word sat alone in the subject line, clean and confident, no hesitation, no conditions. A moment later, another notification, approved and done. That one came from a director who used to ask me to review every line twice before moving forward. Today, his certainty arrived in under a minute. I didn't respond. I watched. The next message appeared almost on top of the last. Effective immediately. 3 confirmations, 3 different voices, 1 shared urgency. I leaned back and let the silence do its work. They were treating my email like a formality, a box to check before moving on to the next item on their agenda. None of them asked why I wanted it spelled out. None of them slowed down long enough to wonder if clarity could cut both ways. My phone vibrated again. This time, the name mattered. Richard Kellen, all confirmed. We're moving forward. No greeting, no explanation. Just a final stamp, pressed hard enough to make an impression. That was the moment everything locked into place. I forwarded the entire thread to my private archive, then saved a second copy to a secure drive I had set up years ago, back when diligence was still valued. Dates, times, names, each message preserved exactly as it arrived. The system acknowledged the archive with a quiet confirmation. No fanfare, no warning. Another message slipped through. This one marked private. Now it starts. Jonah Reed never wasted words. As head of compliance, he'd learned that the most dangerous things happened right after everyone agreed something was finished. I typed a reply and erased it. He didn't need reassurance. He needed distance. Outside the building, my phone buzzed again. A calendar notification canceled itself. Then another, access quietly falling away, piece by piece. Just as Richard had ordered, inside the company, they were congratulating themselves on efficiency, on decisiveness, on how smoothly they'd removed a problem. They had no idea what they had just finalized. I locked the screen, slipped the phone into my bag, and kept walking. The door they'd slammed shut behind me echoed once, then went still. Somewhere above, processes were waking up, slow and methodical, responding not to anger or intent, but to confirmation. And confirmation is difficult to undo. What safeguards exist when someone is removed too quickly? They confirmed it, Jonah said. The line was steady, almost relieved, immediate, unanimous. I pictured him at his desk, sleeves rolled, eyes already on the clock. Compliance never celebrated. It prepared. That triggers it. He continued, automatically. I didn't need the explanation, but I let him give it anyway. Distance mattered now. When a senior risk officer is terminated without notice, he went on. The system locks approvals tied to operational exposure. All logs are preserved. Nothing gets overwritten. Nothing disappears. A pause, paper shifting on his end. They forgot that part. I closed my eyes for a second, not out of satisfaction, out of recognition. Years ago, when the board wanted speed without accountability, I'd pushed back hard. This rule had been the compromise. I remember the vote, Jonah added. They didn't like it, but they wanted your signature on the policy. They wanted insurance. I said, not restraint. Exactly. Another pause. This one heavier. It's already live, he said. No manual switch. No override without escalation. My phone chimed once, then again. Internal alerts I could no longer open. The system acknowledging its own boundaries. Approvals they push, now Jonah continued. They queue, they flag. Anyone who tries to force them leaves a trail. I thought of the boardroom applause, the certainty, the way they rushed me out as if time itself were a threat. They didn't remove a problem, Jonah said quietly. They froze it in place. I leaned against the wall outside my apartment, listening, letting the consequences take shape without my involvement. What do you need from me? I asked. Nothing, he said. That's the point. You're not acting. The process is. A message popped up on my screen, this one visible. Approval pending review. Then another. Access restricted pending audit preservation. Jonah exhaled. They'll notice soon, or they'll keep pushing and make it worse. I slipped the phone back into my bag. You warned them. I warned them not to rush, he said. They never listened to that part. We disconnected without ceremony. No plan, no alliance, just a shared understanding of how systems behave when provoked. Somewhere, documents were being locked in place, decisions slowed, quiet safeguards doing exactly what they were designed to do. And upstairs, the board was still moving fast. What mistakes do people make when they think they've already won? The announcement went out before noon. Interim operations leadership effective immediately. A name I recognized. Someone who had never signed off on risk without asking me first. The message was clean, confident, forward-looking, applause, rebranded. My phone buzzed with fragments of the aftermath, a forwarded screenshot, a clipped line from an internal town hall. Stability is our priority. Another message followed, almost cheerful. We're moving fast to reassure partners. Fast again. Always fast. Inside the system. Speed didn't translate the way they thought it did. Approvals queued instead of clearing. A routine authorization stalled. Then another. No alarms, no warnings. Just delays that didn't resolve. A director's note appeared in my inbox. Clearly not meant for me. Why is this still pending? A reply landed beneath it. Tighter, less patient. Compliance says it's locked. Locked was a word they rarely heard. They preferred flexibility, discretion, shortcuts that looked like efficiency until someone traced the path. Another vibration. This time, a calendar invite, flickered on my screen and vanished, canceled before it could be opened. Then the call came. Meredith. The voice was measured, careful. Mason Pike, corporate counsel. We'd worked together long enough to recognize the tone he used when things stopped being theoretical. I need to understand the sequence from this morning. I'm no longer inside the company. I said, neutral, accurate. Yes, he said, quickly, I'm aware. This is about the approvals issued after your termination. Issued was generous. Attempted was closer. They're not clearing, he continued. And now we're seeing preservation flags. Silence held between us. Not confusion, calculation. You're seeing what the policy requires, I said. Another pause. Longer. I didn't realize it would activate automatically, Mason said. It was designed that way. A breath on the line. Papers shifting. The board is convening again, he said. Urgently, not a celebration this time. Not applause. My phone chimed once more. A new alert, visible even without access. Multiple approvals pending review. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my bag. Somewhere above, they were still smiling for the cameras, still telling themselves they had contained the damage. Inside the machinery they had trusted to obey. Quiet markers were stacking up, time-stamped and patient. Legal didn't call unless something had already gone wrong. And Mason Pike had never sounded rushed before. Why invite someone back after humiliating them? The message came from Richard, not legal. We need you here, now. No apology, no explanation. Just urgency stripped of ceremony. I arrived without acknowledging the power shift he was trying to reclaim. The room looked the same, but the posture inside it had changed. Compliance sat closer to the head of the table. Legal had brought files instead of a tablet. No one applauded this time. Richard didn't stand. We have a situation, he began, tapping the table once, as if that could restore order. Approvals are stuck. Partners are asking questions. We need this resolved. Resolved. Not explained. Not examined. Mason Pike leaned forward, fingers laced. We're seeing audit preservation flags tied to this morning's termination. Jonah Reed didn't look up from his notes. The process is functioning as designed. Richard's jaw tightened. This isn't the time for process lectures. It activated automatically, Jonah replied. There's no manual override at this stage. Eyes shifted to me. The invitation finally made sense. Richard turned. You built these safeguards. You know how to unwind them. I set my bag down but didn't sit. I know how they work. Then help us clean this up. Clean. As if this were a spill. Mason cleared his throat. Meredith. For clarity, any action taken now would need to be documented. Extensively. I nodded once, as it should be. Richard exhaled. Sharp. We don't need documentation, we need movement. That's not how preservation works. Silence followed, heavier than before. The word preservation carried weight they hadn't anticipated. It didn't accuse, it recorded. Jonah finally looked up. Every approval attempted after an immediate termination of a senior risk officer is queued. Each attempt is logged. Each log is immutable. Richard pushed back his chair. This is absurd. We're being paralyzed by our own systems. You're being slowed, I said. There's a difference. His eyes narrowed. Are you saying you can't fix this? I'm saying I'm not inside the company, I replied. I have no authority to intervene. Mason glanced at Richard, then back at me. If this proceeds, he said carefully. Exposure expands. I met his gaze. Who told you this meeting would stay internal? The room went still. Not a breath. Not a shuffle. Richard looked at Mason. Mason didn't answer. Whatever protection they thought this meeting offered was already gone. Who is responsible when everyone agrees? Mason Pike stood without being prompted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The files in front of him were already doing the work. The exposure isn't speculative, he said, sliding a document to the center. It's documented, written confirmations, time-stamped, unanimous. A director shifted. We followed protocol. Mason didn't look at him. You confirmed an immediate termination of a senior risk officer without notice. In writing, multiple times. Another chair scraped back. We were told it was necessary. Jonah's pen stopped moving. Necessary isn't a defense. It's a description. Mason turned a page. Each approval attempt after that moment was logged. Each attempt names the individual who initiated it. Silence pressed down, dense and uncomfortable. Vivian Shaw cleared her throat. I didn't authorize anything beyond the vote. Mason nodded once. Your reply reads, confirmed and approved. That's authorization. Her mouth opened, then closed. The room watched her realize that words don't loosen after they harden. Richard leaned forward, hands flat. This is getting out of proportion. Proportion follows documentation, Mason replied, not intention. A phone buzzed on the table, then another. Someone checked their screen and went pale. I can't get in, a director muttered. My access. The interruption came quietly, almost politely. A chime from Richard's tablet. He tapped the screen once, again. Nothing. Jonah didn't look up. Chairman access has been restricted pending review. Richard stood. That's not possible. Mason met his eyes. It is, and it's standard. Richard's hand tightened around the edge of the table. You're telling me I'm locked out of my own company. I'm telling you the system recorded your confirmation, Mason said, and responded accordingly. No one applauded. No one spoke. The air shifted as the board realized agreement had not diluted responsibility. It had multiplied it. I remained standing where I was, untouched by the scramble, not because I was immune, but because I wasn't inside it anymore. Jonah closed his notebook. From here on, he said, every action is traceable. Richard looked around the room, searching for support that didn't arrive. The collapse didn't announce itself. It documented itself. And there was no signature left to add. What is dignity worth when power is on the line? Richard waited until legal and compliance stepped out. The door closed softer than it had earlier, like the room was holding its breath. He didn't sit. He paced once, then stopped across from me. We can fix this. I stayed where I was. Standing felt appropriate. Name your terms, he continued. Reinstatement, expanded authority. A compensation adjustment to reflect the inconvenience. Inconvenience. The word landed wrong, like a coin on glass. He slid a sheet across the table. Numbers filled the page. Precise and generous. A severance reversal. A retention package. Silence. Priced neatly at several $1 million paid over time. No investigation, he added. No statements. We reset. And everyone walks away intact. I didn't look at the paper. I watched his hands instead. They weren't steady. This isn't about the money, I said. His jaw tightened. Everything is about money, for you, I replied. This is about containment. He leaned in. You think burning this down helps anyone? I'm not burning anything, I said. I'm stepping out of the way. Richard's voice dropped. You owe this company. I already paid, I said. In time, in restraint. In warnings you ignored. He straightened. Irritation cracking through the confidence. You could stop this. I could, I said. I won't. The door opened without ceremony. Mason Pike stepped back in. Face unreadable. Jonah followed. Calm as ever. Mason didn't sit. The board has been notified, effective immediately. All voting members are suspended pending review. Richard turned sharply. You can't do that. Mason held up a folder. It's already filed. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence didn't wait for permission. Richard looked at me one last time. You're choosing to walk away. Yes, I said. That's the only choice you can't undo. I picked up my bag and moved toward the door. No signatures, no counteroffers. Behind me, systems continued their work, indifferent to negotiation. I didn't look back. Some endings don't need agreement to be final. What does accountability look like after the noise fades? It didn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It came through calendar cancellations, brief statements, and doors that stopped opening. Vivian Shaw resigned first. Her message was short, carefully worded, circulated internally before anyone outside could ask questions. She cited personal reasons. No one challenged it. They didn't need to. 2 directors followed within days. One was removed outright, escorted from the building by the same security team that had rushed me out. Another stayed silent until legal released a notice confirming his role was under review. His phone stopped ringing after that. Jonah called once, not to update me, to confirm distance. You're no longer listed anywhere, he said. No advisory role, no transition. Good, I replied. They're restructuring, he added. Committees dissolved, new controls, external oversight. I pictured the boardroom without its usual confidence. Fewer voices, slower decisions, meetings that ended without applause. Mason Pike left a voicemail later that evening. His tone was formal, restrained. The investigation is proceeding, he said. Your documentation is complete. You won't be required to participate further. Not required, not requested. Finished. I deleted the message without saving it. Inside the company, systems adjusted. Titles disappeared. Access levels changed. Authority redistributed carefully, like weight shifted to keep something upright. They didn't say my name. They didn't need to. The absence carried enough meaning. A former colleague texted once. They're asking who signed off on everything. It read. I didn't answer. By the end of the week, the narrative had settled. A governance failure, a procedural lapse, corrective action underway. No villains, no heroes, just consequences moving through the structure they had been built into. I passed the building one morning on my way somewhere else. The logo was still there. The windows still reflected the city the same way. What had changed wasn't visible from the street. Inside, power had thinned, not vanished, just stripped of certainty. And I wasn't part of it anymore. What actually destroys a career? Revenge or recklessness? The outcomes arrived without ceremony. Richard Kellen's removal was announced in a brief filing, effective immediately. No farewell note. No transition period. His authority ended the same way it had been exercised, abruptly, and without witnesses he could control. Vivian Shaw's suspension became permanent after her testimony. 2 other directors lost their seats following independent review. Their names appeared once, then stopped appearing at all. Access revoked. Committees dissolved. Influence evaporated. Jonah called one final time. Your file is closed, he said. No outstanding obligations. Send the release, I replied. The document arrived within the hour. Plain language, clean terms. I read every line. Then I signed it, returned it, and deleted the copy from my drive. That signature didn't give me anything back. It severed the last thread. Mason Pike sent a short acknowledgement. Receipt confirmed. This concludes our contact. I didn't respond. There was no meeting to attend, no chair to reclaim, no statement to issue. The company moved forward without me, quieter and slower, learning the cost of speed the hard way. Controls tightened. Decisions took longer. People checked their language before they pressed send. That was enough. I walked past the building one last time, not to look up, not to remember, just to keep going. Careers end when people confuse applause with approval, speed with safety, power with immunity. Mine didn't end. It concluded. I didn't win by humiliating anyone. I won by refusing to participate in the lie that my silence was owed. The truth didn't need my voice raised. It needed my name attached to the right moment and then removed. When a room celebrates your erasure, don't rush to defend yourself. Preserve what's real, document what matters, and choose the ending no one else can rewrite.